right, welcome back to our social hour right here on K24 TV. Thanks a lot for sticking with us. We appreciate your company every morning. My name is Shiko Kaitani. Keep interacting with us. Keep talking to us through our socials. Remember, you can catch us as at K24 TV, and our WhatsApp number is at the bottom of your screen. Should you wish to engage us or even contribute to our ongoing discussions on The Breakfast Show. Now, experiencing abuse and neglect in childhood can lead to adverse outcomes in adulthood. Now, there are different forms of abuse besides that which is physical that even perhaps parents and caregivers are unaware of, all which can result in very serious emotional harm. Today, let's talk for a moment about catching the problem as early as possible, because this really does give both the child and the abuser the opportunity to get the help they need. Start engaging us should you require, of course, any assistance, or if you've got any questions for my panel. In fact, allow me to introduce them. Welcoming back to the show, Mr. Stephen Kigwa. He is a life coach, author, and seminar speaker. Very good friend of mine as well. I like to believe. I think we're good friends.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Stephen Kigwa, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for
Madam Jane Ruben, also not a stranger to the show. She's been with us before, and you absolutely loved her. We took a look at your feedback. She is a counseling psychologist and parental empowerment facilitator with the Amani Counseling and Training Center. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. So even as we get started with this particular conversation, remember, we always do have a question of the day for you. Let me just throw that your way so you can start engaging us. And we ask you today, what forms of abuse and neglect do you believe cause the deepest scars in children? What forms of abuse and neglect do you believe cause the deepest scars in children? Do you believe it's just the emotional or just the physical? Talk to us at K24 TV. And so let me start off there, Jane. When we talk about the misconceptions around what abuse is, a lot of people will just think it's all about the physical. But the last time I spoke to you, you said it boils down to more than that. Even denying certain provisions and basic rights is another form of it.
Yeah, so thank you, Shiko. It's nice being here again. I think we may want to start to understand what we mean by child abuse and neglect. And one of the things that comes out clearly is that when a parent or maybe a guardian or a caregiver behaves or treats a child out of the norm, you know, there is a normal way of having the child to grow up. So if there is any deviation of that kind, then that leads to a neglect or an abuse of some kind, and has a massive, actually, effect on the child, either physical, emotional, and sometimes even sexual abuse, because some parents and caregivers will also cause abuse sexually to the children.
I think a lot of single women can relate to this, Mr. Kigwa, when you look at the situation that they're in. And a lot of them will talk about how the men in their lives, or the men that used to be in their lives, the father of these children, are not providing. Would you actually look at that as a form of neglect?
I think, like Jane has just mentioned about what abuse is all about, I think that's actually the basic, what we can actually call neglect, which is actually a form of abuse. That's the basic when a parent, a father in this case, for single mothers and all that, a father is not providing the basic necessities in terms of food and clothing and shelter or education. I think that is an abuse. But like she mentioned, it goes beyond that. That's just basically the basics of what abuse is all about. Yes.
And you see, the thing is, the reason I brought that up is because perhaps we don't even recognize it as neglect. When you decide that you're not going to pay or provide for your child, you don't look at it as abuse. You just say, oh, and you make up all these excuses. But we get there's economic factors that play. But I want you to actually speak to even the men who are watching this show, because you deal a lot with men's issues and men talk, and you know, that's
I think the society we live in also is a bit it's a complex matter. Let me just break it down a little bit. There are those mothers, single mothers actually, who feel, I don't want anything to do with the father. I don't want the father actually to see the children at all. But I want the father to be able to provide for the children. So you see now, it becomes a tug of war, because the father is also a parent just like the mother. So the mother perhaps just wants the guy to provide. He doesn't want physical touch, you know, contact with the children. So it becomes a bit complex. But besides that, we also have fathers who actually just decide they are not going to care for their children, which is wrong. But then we also have another category of fathers who, they are willing, but they are not able. Economically, they are not. And the mothers are insisting, for my children, they can only go to this kind of school. They can only wear this kind of clothes. Now you see, it's a complex matter. There are those who actually neglect because it's negligence, but there are those who are trying, but they can only do so much.
Okay. And we'll dive a little bit more into that later in the discussion as we talk about, you know, what a child actually does need, including that kind of attention that perhaps some of them are not really getting. But we've seen rising cases of domestic violence, especially, you know, during this COVID season, Jane. Perhaps even as a couple or as parents, you haven't really thought about what you're arguing, you're fighting, the kind of violence in your household is really doing to a child.
Wow, that's a great one that is actually affecting the children big time. If a child witnesses violence of whatever kind, either it is the fathers who are fighting with the mother or the children within themselves, they are also fighting, that will also cause an emotional breakdown to them. For instance, if this child keeps on seeing the father fighting the mother all the time, probably noise all the time, there will be a way of them trying to cope with the situation. And this might also have a far-reaching effect even in their lives. You'll find they'll have issues to do with maybe even interaction with other people in their families, even later. And even forming a relationship with their spouses later on in life might be affected. That's also an effect on the children.
And you, so Steve, you do extensive work with young adults. I'm wondering what, you know, child abuse, neglect, exposure to domestic violence really has on them as they grow, and, you know, the kind of complex trauma that ends up developing.
Let me just pick it up from where Jane has left it. Children learn where they live. They learn where they live. If children are raised with criticism, they learn how to condemn. If children are raised in an environment where they see fight and hostility, they learn how to fight. Where children are raised in an environment where they are praised, they learn how to appreciate and to have faith. So they learn how to live. The parenting actions of both the mother and the father have got a lot of impact on their children, even in their adult lives. In fact, the personality and the character of children is shaped early enough, and that's how they become when they become adults. Those fears are installed, like she mentioned. They may never have been able, they may never at some point be able to enjoy a marital relationship with a spouse, you know, husband or wife, because of what they saw. I have actually even had children say, I never want to get married. If this is how, you know, husbands treat their wives, or if this is how wives treat their husbands, I never want to be married. You see, they're affected so much.
And that's interesting. Tell us about some of the stories you hear on ground when you're interacting with all these young adults and how the kind of environment that they're in is really shaping their thoughts.
I want to pull out two things. One is about self-esteem. Children's self-esteem is affected so much by how they perceive their parents in terms of the love and the care and the approval and the appreciation they get from their parents. That really determines a lot in how they shape up their self-esteem, how much they like about themselves, how they feel about themselves. It affects them. And children need water like plants need rain. If they are not getting love from their parents, the person they consider to be the most important person in their lives, they feel that they cannot measure up to. And one of the things that I've seen in not just even in young adults, even in adults, is, in fact, the key thing that actually hinders people from achievement is fear of failure and fear of rejection. And fear of failure and rejection are installed in us during the time we are being brought up or raised as children. It is installed by parents. Can you believe it?
That's true.
How is it done? When a parent keeps telling a child, stop, don't touch, don't do that. You see, the child is inclined to want to touch, to feel, and all that. So the child can understand, why am I being told stop, don't? So they are trying to associate that every time I want to do something, I have to stop. Mama will not be happy. Papa will not be happy with this. And if mama is not happy, then it means I'm not loved. So that develops in them the fear of failure. They don't want to try something so that they don't fail. They don't want to miss out on love.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Do you know if you're creating an unsafe environment for your child? Well, let's find out from Jane, you know, some examples of what unsafe environments could be for a child that perhaps even we're not necessarily aware of. Yeah.
Well, yes, those are some of the unconscious things that maybe are done by parents at home or even the caregivers. For example, the issues of, probably I'll give an example of an emotional abuse.
Yeah.
When you keep probably shouting at children, when you keep sort of demoralizing them and, you know, some character assassination, like, look at you, you're a fool, that kind of a thing, it causes some emotional, you know, stress and abuse to the child, and the caregiver may not be aware. Probably you're actually reacting over something that the child has done, but you're not aware that you're actually causing some damage. So that kind of an emotional abuse. Sometimes you will find that children are also exposed to sex, to, you know, some matters to do with sexuality very early. For instance, you might be thinking that your 2-year-old child is not observing anything, so you will come from the bathroom, undress, start dressing. The child is just looking at you and wondering what is happening. So there are those mental pictures that you're painting in the child of that, in the mind of that child, which are actually some sort of child sexual abuse. We call them CSAs. So it is important for us to probably be aware of some of those things that maybe we do unconsciously that might be affecting the children.
Right.
Yes.
And speaking about not doing things intentionally, there are parents who probably don't even understand that maybe I am abusing my child or I'm neglecting my child. Do you get that a lot from some of the parents, and they'll say, wow, I didn't know I was doing that?
In fact, that is actually how I define child abusers. Let me give you an example. If I did not know the purpose of this thing, I might as well use it as my handkerchief. It's called abuse. I'm using it for the wrong reason. And being a parent, having children does not make you a parent, just like having a piano in your house does not make you a pianist. So there are so many parents who call themselves parents because they have children, but they are actually not parenting. They don't know the reason of them being parent. I think every father, every mother needs to ask themselves this question. Why did I have children in the first place? The second question they should ask themselves is, how does it feel to be my own son or my own daughter? Now, someone needs to have that conversation within themselves, because if you can only get into the mind of your child or your son, daughter, to know how they think or feel about you, it might really shock you that you actually have been doing parenting the wrong way. So, and you see, the problem is that we don't have places where we are taught about parenting. So people get children and all of a sudden they think the only thing they can do is provide food and shelter. And they think the children will just grow up like Kienyeji chicken, you know. It's just a big mess we have in this society. Yes.
All right. Remember, we've got that question of the day for you. And let me ask my director to actually put that up on screen. And if you've got any feedback, we will take a look at them. Well, we are asking, what forms of abuse and neglect do you believe cause the deepest scars in children? What forms of abuse and neglect do you believe cause the deepest scars in children? And this time we've got some text messages. Yes, Abu? Okay. Well, we've got Martin Mwamba, a criminology student at Karatina University, who goes on to say, when the parents keep on fighting every now and then in the presence of their children, they learn that that's the way to go, that's the way to live. They learn that when mom has done something wrong, that dad should fight her in return. That's how they grow up, and definitely that's what they will do. Wow. Monkey see, monkey do. Emotional abuse is least thought about because it cannot be seen but felt. Denial of basics is abuse, which makes this child feel low and helpless. Wow, thank you so much for that. We've got another one here that says, morning everyone, I believe when parents decrease in their responsibilities, this is because I experienced that and even affected my education and led me to educating myself and working as a house girl to achieve what I want in life. And this is a fear of marriage. And also parents' separation and violence is also quite a thing. Okay, well, it's, you know, you're starting to see people actually opening up, Jane and Stephen. But going back to even some of the things that we are talking about, basic rights of the child. The fact that you perhaps don't want to pay school fees, you're not going to have provisions in the house, you know, you deny your child certain things, is also what we are talking about. Let me start off with you, and you know, you can also respond to what we are seeing from our viewers already. Yeah, all right. Yeah, you see, denial, it could be because of two things. Some parents will think if I don't buy you a certain thing, I'm sort of telling you behave well so that I buy for you. Right.
Then the other thing, it could be because of the crisis, the financial issues, so you don't have the money.
Right.
So it should actually be communicated to the child or the children why we are not having this and having the other.
Yeah.
So then it is for them to understand. So then the effect of this kind of an abuse or this kind of not having whatever it is that they require will not have an impact in their minds. So then as you speak to them and get them to understand, it is important to know that I'm probably withdrawing this because of probably your behavior, because there are issues of punishments and validations and stuff as a parent.
Yeah.
So if you're to withdraw a certain privilege because of ABCD, XYZ, whatever it is that you're doing, let them understand, let them know. So then if there is an emotional abuse from your part, let it also be communicated. Or let the child also allow them that they will also be speaking to you to tell you, Mom, Dad, this is what we are going through, and probably this is what we feel about whatever it is you're doing to us. So let it be known.
Okay.
Yes.
It's very un-African, by the way, to show affection, Bonakigwa. And the issue of limited physical contact is something perhaps many people don't even understand. Could be bringing a wedge between you and your child.
That's a very good thinking line we need to talk about and dissect it. But allow me just to pick up on what Jane just mentioned about, communicating with your children. You see, this communication cannot happen if it happens, you're trying to make it happen when things are going wrong.
Yeah.
You have to start it when the child is a small child, so that you grow, the child grows knowing I can talk to mommy, I can converse with daddy, and I can express myself, I can be open. Anyway, there are 10 major responsibilities of parenting. Many parents don't know.
Right.
10 major responsibilities. Okay. The first one is to give love and approval to children. To give love. Now, there are 3 ways you give love. One of them is by saying or by telling your children that you love them. I love you.
Yeah.
And it is very important that children get to know that you love them by you telling them. And I keep telling fathers, please make sure you tell especially your daughters you love them. Because if you don't and you are the figure of authority in their lives, they grow up without ever hearing that from you.
Okay. Hold that thought for a second. I understand we've got a caller on the line. Is Joshua from Kirinyaga still with us? Okay.
Yes.
Morning, Joshua.
Morning, Shiko.
Karibu sana.
And morning to the panelists.
Yes.
Now, I think the greatest, rather, the most widespread form of child abuse, I think, especially in Africa, is child labor. But again, you realize that there is a very thin line between child labor and what we engage our children in, rather what we train them as a way of inculcating the values of hard work.
Yeah.
So I think that is a debate, or maybe our panelists can tell us. But according to me, the worst form of child abuse that we have in Africa especially is whereby parents try to achieve their dreams and ambitions through their children. And it's just not happening to young children. It's actually happening to teenagers and people who are above the age of 18.
Right.
Whereby you realize that your parents want to choose for you what you want to be in future. Probably a child, by the time they're in Form 4, they want to be mechanics. But the parents are so much fixated on their kids becoming, nurses and teachers. And eventually it ends up actually not working, because you find yourself at the age of 30 and 35.
Right. Because
of a selfish decision that was made by your parents, actually finding yourself in a career that you don't like, you're not comfortable, you are stressed from Monday to Monday. I think that is the worst form of abuse that is being perpetrated by parents on their children.
All right. Well, thank you, Joshua, for that. And yeah, he actually has brought up the issue of parents projecting, on their children is perhaps the worst form of abuse in his thoughts or in his opinion. But you are saying something, Bonakigwa, in regards to 10, did you say 10 responsibilities?
Yeah, 10 major roles of parenting.
10 major roles of parents.
And I was talking about the first one being giving love and approval.
Okay.
And I said, you had asked me a question about, the physical, touch and all these things. So I was actually trying to come to that.
For affection,
yes. For affection. So the first one is to tell them. And I was saying, I always encourage fathers to tell their daughters especially, they love them. Why? Because if you don't, and your child grows up, your daughter grows up without ever hearing that from you, the moment they'll hear it from someone out there, they will be gone. They will just go.
It's so true. That is so true.
So the second one is touch, touching.
Yeah.
And this is actually where it is claimed that it is not African. I am of a different school of thought.
Yeah.
I don't think, we say that hugging and touching is not African. It's not true. My thinking. Let me tell you. I do some little farming in my village. Anytime I go to see my goats and my cows, I don't feel like I have seen them until I touch them.
Yeah.
And the moment I touch the animals, they spread themselves in such a way that they want me to touch them more.
Yeah.
And I ask myself this question. If an animal can respond to touch, and an animal is not an African or an Asian or whatever, what about a human being? There is a need for touch for human being.
Yeah.
In fact, I read something, I don't know whether Jen agrees with it, that children need 4 hugs every day for survival, 8 hugs every day for help, and 12 hugs every day to do fantastic things in life.
Okay, so 24. My son is going to be successful because I am constantly kissing him. In fact, mine is a bit too much and hugging. But I like that. That is so good. I'm actually going to write that down because why can't we get to that point whereby it just flows freely, you know, as parents or even as Africans? I think maybe it's that whole public display of affection that doesn't sit well with Africans. And you see this anyway in the homes, especially men have been taught that if you are the man of the house, you don't do such things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would call it monkey business, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
It's something that we found people doing, and we don't even know why they are doing it. But we need to personalize that. I mean, this is your son, this is your child.
Yeah.
So those are about 24 hugs in a day. So you can come close to 20 or 10.
Right, that's true.
You know?
That's true.
Yeah, so it's actually a personal decision that you have to make, because now we don't have a child who is called mtoto wa siku hizi ama watoto wa siku hizi. It is actually your personal child. They go wrong, it is your child. They do well, you have done it, you have hacked it. So it's a matter of actually parents becoming aware of what are some of the things that will help and nurture the child to be the kind of a person they would want to become and you would also want to see.
Right.
Yes.
We need to speak to a group of people here, Bwana Kigwa, and I'm sure you see this a lot even in your workshops. That victim survivor experience, the feeling of self-blame, shame, it's my fault, this is what happened to me because I did something as a child, and this is why my parents neglected me or abused me. It's very worrying. How many people actually blame themselves for what happened in their childhood?
To be honest with you, I actually don't meet many people who blame themselves. I meet many people who blame others. They blame other people. They blame their parents, or they blame the society, they blame the school they went to, they blame everything. They blame the government, they blame God, they blame the weather, everything. But of course, there are people also who have that, I would call it a condition sort of, that they blame themselves. And it's because they were shamed when they were young, most of the time, being criticized a lot. Being told you can't amount up to anything. Did you know, I was surprised, I was reading some statistic that many of the people that are in prison, because I've been doing some prison ministry, visiting young men in prisons, I was surprised when I read some survey. Many of them, at some point in their lives, they were told by their parents, you are a disappointing person. You can't do much in life. And for sure, they are happy in prison saying, I did not disappoint my parents. I ended up going where they said I would end up going. Whoa. So you see, that tends to happen a lot to children who are criticized, being told you can't do this, or you better do this, or so they try to associate that their worth is tied to something, to some competency. And children need to know that you love them regardless of whether they are doing things right or not. They should never feel that your love is less because they have done something wrong.
They should never doubt your love.
In fact, they should not even have a perception that you don't love them enough.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff. And speaking about, the power of words, we'll talk a little bit about that when we get back from a short commercial break, including some of the misconceptions around abuse and neglect. We'll be talking about that in just a moment, but keep talking to us at K24 TV. Remember, our question of the day still stands. We're asking you which form of abuse you believe actually causes the deepest scars in children. Right, and there it is on your screen. What forms of abuse do you believe are actually causing the deepest scars in children? At K24 TV is how you can reach us. And remember, our WhatsApp number is right there on the screen. You can even call us. We'd love to hear your voice. Stick with us.